afternoon, everybody. It's 3 p.m. Today is Friday, January 16, the monthly meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Commission. Before we start, we are all going to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Then I will introduce the members of the Planning Commission. To my left is Michael Anderson. Then we have Christian Picot, who is the co-chair of the Planning Commission. Jeannie Zdrulas had a death in her family, so she couldn't attend today. And Jacob Yahanian on my far right. Hi, Jacob. And my name is Michel Brogard, and I'm the co-chair of the Planning Commission. The first item on the agenda, and I remind everybody that the agendas are publicly available on the village website, posted a few days before each monthly meeting of the Planning Commission. So the item is motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which took place December 12, 2025.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Christian. Everybody
all in favor?
In favor?
Aye.
Nobody opposes? Aye. Okay, it's approved. And item number 3 on the agenda is electoral reform with ballot proposal, and Christian is going to walk us through this.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and welcome today. Let me review the proposal in your packet. For those who are listening at home, you can read them on page 2 of today's agenda for the Planning Commission that is posted on the village website. We've discussed this with many residents, many past and present elected official. We have a few in the room, and received many different opinions. The recommendation was discussed and reviewed with Village Council, and I'll go through the why, the what, the who, and the how. So why now? First, a ballot proposal last November for Suffolk County legislator, known as Prop 2, if you'll remember, to extend terms to 4 years passed. So there is interest in the topic. What are we solving? Residents overwhelmingly prefer elections every other year. Voters are divided whether the terms should be extended. Who will it impact? None of the current board members. And these are the board members who are up for elections in 2026. It doesn't impact those. Neither does it for 2027, as it is proposed to start in 2028. So that avoids a perceived self-interest in this discussion. How to implement with a ballot proposal to ensure government transparency. Now, whether you are for this proposal or against it, it's important to understand you'll be able to express your views in the ballot box. We know there's a lot of different opinions out there. And let me quote one resident. 4-year terms in a small town is a lifetime if someone poisons the water. Another writes, longer terms may promote nepotism and institutionalized mediocrity. And I'm sure there'll be more shared during the upcoming public hearing. A public hearing will be held on a topic, but at the end of the day, you'll vote for this either way. So let me recap how the electoral process works today. First, you have elections every year. 2, in order to maintain a staggered board, you have elections 1 year for 2 trustees, and the following year, elections for 2 trustees and a mayor. So you're going to have elections in 2026 for 2 trustees, and in 2027 for 2 trustees and a mayor. That's how it works today. The recommendation are, 1, to have a referendum on June 19th, 2026, for voters to express their choice for on a proposition. 4-year terms resulting in a biannual cycle. Voters may prefer elections every other year, as I said earlier, ensuring continuity and stability, and we'll go through that. And it still maintains accountability by your local government. An implementation starting in 2028. This will effectively result after that in an odd year election cycle thereafter, and the election remains in June. That allows for voters to focus on local issues so that they are not subsumed by regional and national issues on an odd year. So if you have elections every other year, should the terms remain 2 years, change to 3, or 4 years? So let me go through each one. If 2-year term, then you'd have an entire board together up for election. That's known as a concurrent board, not a staggered board as you have currently. That means an entire board could be changed every other year. I read someone proposing that approach achieves administrative efficiency without weakening voter oversight. It'll become clear in a minute why this is a bad idea. If 3-year term, you'll end up with an election with 1 year off in 2 consecutive years with an election. That doesn't solve for elections every other year. So therefore, a 4-year term makes sense if voters want election every other year. Now, if you could put the chart, Jake, that'd be great. This is why all town council members in towns, and there are 10 towns in the county, have 4-year terms in Suffolk County, and 60% of them have a supervisor with 4-year terms. So you see up there all of the various towns from Babylon to Southampton, and you will see that 60% of them have a town supervisor with 4-year terms, and all of them have the town council member with 4 years. Every village in the county which have 4-year terms are for both the mayor and the trustee, and you have that list of villages. We have 33 villages in the county. Half of the villages have these 4-year terms, and many of the other half, and I'll include Sag Harbor as an example, have brought up the idea at one time or another. Let me now share the 5 reasons to consider this. The first one is protecting professional and administrative stability. While residents focus on elected officials who stand on its dais and you come to public hearings all the time, there are people who are working for them to provide the service you expect for your taxes. And frequent elections creates a culture of anxiety, a culture of administrative anxiety when village staff, including your administrator, your building inspector, your head of DPW, your police chief, or your first responders who ensure your public safety, it functions best with a stable governing philosophy, and it avoids unnecessary attrition or changes that we've seen. Number 2, deepening institutional memory and expertise. A 4-year term allows a trustee to oversee a project from inception to completion. Major infrastructure takes 3 to 5 years from planning to ribbon cutting. We finished one major, or in the process of finishing one major, solving for public safety and communication. The community is about to embark possibly in a sewer, which will take that period of time. So experienced member have the time to mentor new officials without the immediate pressure of an upcoming re-election campaign. The third point is overcoming what I call the learning curve, and longer terms prevent this legislative paralysis that occurs when a board is constantly in a state of flux in municipal budgeting and land use regulations, as you all probably imagine, are notoriously complex. So that learning curve is important for every board of trustee who is up for vote. Safeguarding against policy volatility. is another, and fourth reason. The short 2-year term force official into a state of perpetual campaigning. Elected officials are listening to residents regularly, not just during campaigns. And with our 4 years, officials can make necessary decisions like controversial zoning change or tax adjustments and have time to prove that the decision's long-term value to the public. Allow me to quote a former mayor of Southampton who served many terms and who wrote to me on the subject. I always felt that having an annual election cycle impeded progress. He writes, sometimes board members shy away from potentially controversial issues because they were up for election. This is a guy who served the community for 12 years. Financial, the last aspect, certainly not the most important, but the cost of running elections, to me, is to us to consider as the least and the last of these many reasons. One important one, though, is that a credit rating agency value the predictability that comes with 4-year terms. This village has a AAA, and you'd want to keep it, especially with a large infrastructure project coming up with your sewer. The county's Board of Election has also recently withdrawn voting machine support for villages, and that's making the process more difficult and expensive to administer. So let me now focus on the implementation so that we can have a visual how this would work. So the Commission is recommending a referendum on a ballot proposal on June 19, 2026, when you'll go and vote for your 2 trustees. Odd-year elections are preferable, as I said earlier, to focus on local issues. And if this proposal were to pass, Southampton Village elected officials would initially have a 3-year term starting in 2028. So let's focus on this chart. 2026, 2 trustees come up, they have 2-year, no impact. 2027, 2 trustees and 1 mayor come up, 2-year election, nothing changes. The lot, trustees C and D, are up for election on June 19, 2026. That lot elected when, or for the next lot, if you will, for 2028, they would have 3-year terms and thereafter 4-year terms. The mayor, trustee A and B, up for election in 2029 would have 4-year terms. The reason you do 1 lot with 3 years initially and everybody thereafter on a 4-year term starting in 2029 is simply to end up with an election cycle every odd year, which you have on this chart. Look, as a conclusion, and we'll certainly invite all of you for comment, let me repeat this. It doesn't reduce accountability. Voters still have a voice every 2 years for half the board. So again, who will it impact? None of the current board members up for elections in 2026 and 27 as it's proposed in 28. And it avoids any perceived self-interest in this proposal. How to implement this ballot proposal, and I know a lot of you here in the room and also at home, and I'm sure the press will have many letters on the subject over the weeks coming. It's a ballot proposal. Anyone who opposes can do so. Anyone who favors it can do so. The final decision rests with the registered voters, providing a transparent process where every voice is heard. And before I turn it over to comments from my board members, fellow board members, and anyone who wants to come and speak from this room, I want to thank the Southampton Press. We have a photographer today. I spoke earlier with Dan Stark, who's recently covering the village, following after Kaylin. He and I spoke earlier this week. I know he's on the call right now, and congratulating him to join the Express News Group, and hopefully he'll be graduating from University of Connecticut in May, and we're delighted to have him in the community, and I know he will be writing an article shortly for the Southampton Press on the topic. And I know he will do it in the best journalism way, which is a bipartisan view for people to see both sides, as I've tried to do today. So I'd like to turn it over to my fellow commission members to provide any input on this recommendation. Gentlemen?
Sure. Thank you, Christian. Great presentation. Michael Anderson, for those who don't know me. Hello, Laura. I've been on the Planning Commission now for about 5-6 years. Subject was brought up maybe 3 or 4 years ago. At that time, we did go through the process, not like Christian just did, but we did go through it. And one of the main reasons why I even brought this up on the agenda years ago was I watched the trustees, I watched the mayor, I watched the whole process. And I think it's so arduous for these gentlemen and ladies to go out there every 2 years, knocking on doors, spending 6 months to try to get elected when they're not really working on village duties that they need, is very, very difficult on them. That's one thing. Second thing is, I feel as though the stability of the village employees, having a different boss possibly every 2 years, is not easy on them. They have to also conform to their likes and dislikes. And if they had 4 years or the same boss for 4 years, I think things would run much, much better. I also feel as though Christian doesn't feel this is all that important, but I think the $40,000 or $50,000 a year that it costs to run the village election is an expense that the village should not have to maintain. I'm a big advocate of tax policy, and I just think it's one example of maybe we don't have to spend that kind of money. We had a big discussion 3 or 4 years ago about 3-year term limits, and everybody was saying, well, and Eduardo was one of them, instead of 4, let's make it 3. Let's meet halfway. And we brought that up this past couple weeks after we've been discussing it, and we came to realize, as Christian showed, that it just doesn't work mathematically. You have a judge that needs to be elected every 4 years. That's mandated by the state. And the cycle just doesn't work. So we really had to go to the 4-year cycle. I'm a big proponent of this. I'm for it. And I think, it is a resolution. The village voters get to vote on this. If they don't like it, then we revert back to the 2 years. If they do like it, then we go to the 4. I've always been a proponent of having the village residents speak their mind and let us hear what they have to say on the subject.
So, thank you, Michael. And we have a number of people here in the room who served on the Planning Commission when the topic was coming up in 2021, 2022. And it was clear at the time that there were diverse opinions on the Planning Commission on the topic. How it was then presented in 2023 as a first topic was through a permissive referendum in November. And let's be clear, if you do a permissive referendum, well, let me just backtrack. If you look at village law, you go to NICOM, and how do you change the election cycle? What it says is you can do it through a permissive referendum and recommends you do it that way. What is a permissive referendum? It's legislative action. You put it up. Residents have 60 days to file a petition, and you need to have 20% of the total registered voters to oppose that. So if you do the math, you'd need 700 signatures. And this came up in November, and everybody in this room and throughout the village said you can't jam it down this way. So we let time go by. When I said why now, we saw a proposal by the county legislation to move from 2 to 4 years. It passed, and that's why we're putting it on the table here, but differently. which is a ballot proposal for everybody to actually vote on it. As I said, there's going to be a ton of opinions between now and June 19 of one way or another. Everybody can express their First Amendment rights, but at the end of the day, you'll all go to the ballot box and put in a decision, and the outcome will be yours to drive. So thank you for that. Michel, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just want to mention something. The Planning Commission is nominated by the mayor, and the mayor, from time to time, asks the Planning Commission to look at issues. So we're not here advocating. We had done the research. Christian obviously feels strongly that this may be a good idea, but this is just a forum, and super happy that so many people seem interested in the subject. Sometimes we're here with literally 2 or 3 people because nobody cares about the subject, but this one seems to be creating a lot of interest, and I think this is good, this is healthy, this is what democracy looks like, and I'm grateful for everybody in the room, especially the celebrities, Kimberly Allen, who used to be a trustee, and we have Trustee Coburn, Trustee Simeoni, Trustee Zenenti.
And we've got another trustee over there, McLaughlin.
Trustee McLaughlin is in the background.
So we can see a lot of present and past elected official who cares about this issue and are here. And I think that's absolutely terrific that we filled out the room. I know some people in the front row are here perhaps more for zoning, and we'll get to that in a minute, but that's where we are. So do you want to say anything, Jake, on that topic, and then we'll hand it over to any public comment?
Sure. I've had the good fortune of being on the planning board under a prior mayor and now serving with my colleagues on the planning commission. And I look back in our village's history and the characteristics and the needs of the village, I would say, over the last 25 and 30 years. And the way I look at it is basically 2 or 3 aspects. Ultimately, as Christian mentioned, it's for the village voters to decide if this is appropriate or not. However, if those of us who've been involved with our village now going 25 plus years, if there is a general consensus that the needs of the village and its population have become much more pronounced, whether it's environmental, whether it's real estate, whether it's social and education and whatnot, and using that as a precursor to have continuity in solving those village needs by allowing the 2 to 4 year tenure, then it warrants a consideration for the village. And that's really the way I look at it, is if the needs of our village have become much more pronounced, I would say over the last 25 and 35 years, and my perspective is it has. I mean, things are a little bit different now than it was 25, 30 years ago. So by partially mitigating the needs of the village by having more continuity of stability in policy making and village action, then it warrants the conversation. If the needs of the village is not paramount, it's not needed, then leave it as is. What difference does another 2 years make? So it's really a micro and macro perspective is the way I look at it.
Okay, that's helpful. And everyone saw on the chart we put up on the screen, the 33 villages in the county, half already have it, and the other half are discussing it. So it's not unusual what we're doing. And as I said, half have already adopted the way we're doing it, and through a ballot proposal for transparency is novel in a way, giving everyone a voice on it. So this is a good time to open, and if anyone wishes to speak on this topic, and we'll get to workforce housing in a minute. So on specifically on the electoral process, wants to come up with the podium, name and address, where we can find you, and debate the topic. Be great.
Edward Simeoni, President Trustee of the Village of Southampton, resident on White Street. And surely all your suggestions have merit, of course. But I think what really we should look at, and I think I mentioned also on the letter to the editor, is in the end accountability. And why do I say accountability? When you have a 2-year term, every 2 years, you have to go out to the public, to the registered voter, and make your case as to why you should remain a trustee, and give your ideas and get feedback. It's so important. Michael, you say you lose 6 months of your time, you don't do anything else. That's really not true. You really campaign maybe the last 2 or 3 months, starting maybe in April. And at that time, it's actually a real education. The fact that not only are you sitting behind a desk and at meetings and discussing policy, but actually going out and talking to people. And talking to people about the issues that you think are important and getting feedback. And if some of the issues that you have not, let's say, handled appropriately, people will tell you that. And I think that's so very important. And it's very important to have the approval and the support of the community that you go out and talk to, and they have a chance to re-elect you. Now, we don't have a big turnover. You usually see that the trustees or the mayors, we had one for 12 years, for example. So it's not like every 2 years you're going to be changing the trustees, and many times they're unopposed. So the issue of saying that you don't have continuity, that's really not a question. I mean, as long as you're doing your job right, you're going to get reelected. And many times you're also unopposed. But I still feel very strongly that the fact that you have to prove yourself every 2 years, and if you have a 4-year term, you have to prove yourself every 4 years. And maybe for 3 years, you're not doing the job right. And people do not want somebody that's on the board or a mayor that they don't approve to be a mayor for 4 years, when instead they really should be making a change. So I think accountability at the end trumps it all. As far as the cost, I mean, we have a budget that's, 30-something million dollars? Come on, guys, give me a break. It's not going to be the $20, $30, $40, $50,000 that's really going to make a difference to the budget of the village. I think it's more important that we have the right people on the board, selected by the community, that do a good job and know they have to be accountable every 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, very helpful. Anyone else wishes to speak? Would you like to come up? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rob Deviney, High Street. I think that you have valid points as for what you want, but I feel that the issues are irretrievably kind of connected to the function of this government and how it's working. I think in the community there is a perception that things could be much better in the governance, which is one example and one thing one hears. I'm not saying it's absolutely true or not, but there's a lack of transparency in this government. There are sneaky moves, maybe, maybe not. There are roads taken over unless you have a heroine that pops up and exposes it, things like that. There are some board members that are not included in meetings. There's agenda problems. There have been for maybe before this administration as well. So there's problems there. Not so long ago, we had issues relative to insurance and lifetime pensions and such. That your issue became if I shouldn't say your issue because you're not involved, right? You're just referees. Anyway, the issue was it seemed to be involved with people getting benefits earlier, quicker. And whereas some improvement, maybe, if that's the word, was accomplished to reduce people getting what seemed to be outstanding benefits from health care and pensions and everything. The resistance had to do with that issue, resistance to long-term terms. And the money is silly. We're all witness to Many new employees that pop on with six-figure amounts that were never needed. All of a sudden, they're needed. So the money is an issue. But anyway, it's the management, I think, of the government that is going to reflect on an issue like this. We have, for instance, people who have been out of government here for 20, 25 years who are getting paid. And you're worried about election money? I mean, I guess they voted themselves that stuff. So that's I think the issues are connected.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, Trustee Zanatti, if you want to join the podium, sure.
Good afternoon. Len Zananti, Burnett Street. We all have personal opinions on this issue, which is, the way we are. But I think the heart of the matter here is that your proposal is that it should be a referendum, which is the most transparent thing you could be recommending, that everybody gets to express their opinion at the ballot box. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Anybody else? I guess all the trustees are going to get some airtime.
Suzanne Murphy, Bauer Drive. I was struck by your concern for the money, and we all have to be concerned about the money. We live in a prosperous community, and we're fortunate, but we have to watch our pennies. I think it's very important that we don't overspend on elections, and four-year terms would allow people to grow into their positions. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today. And I think we have Trustee Coburn who wants to come, or Mrs. Davini wants to come? Sure, great.
Laura Davini, 40 High Street, former member of the Planning Commission. Yeah, I was a member when this first came up, and it was either tabled or in public trustee meetings just done away with. My question is, not question, I want a confirmation. Is the trustee and mayor's job, are they considered part-time? Or are they full-time positions? It's been my understanding through the years that they are part-time positions, alluding to the fact that they have other interests and other ways of making income, jobs. So you're asking, or what your research did was 4-year terms. Now that sounds to me almost like a full-time position. I mean, you're saying that, it gives them, they're going to be present, they're going to be able to answer questions, they're going to be able to do policy, and if they're full-time, yeah. But then that also alludes to money, salary, and benefits. So I like the fact that they're part-time. That pleases me, because that means that part of their time they're out in the community dealing with things in the community, and that's wonderful. That's what they should be doing. So I'd like them to be part-time. I noticed recently that sometimes it's very difficult coming into this building, finding a trustee or a mayor or anybody in residence. Where are you? But they're part-time, so, I take that on myself. Okay, you're a part-time guy or woman or person. So anyway, my thing is that we tabled this a while ago, and it's been brought up again, I guess, at the mayor's behest.
Sorry, it was brought up in November 2023 in a format that all the residents were up in arms on what do you call it? permissive referendum. And this debate has not come away, and it was reinforced by us after seeing the elections in November of Prop 2. And so we brought it back up on the table. The mayor likes the idea to have, give people a choice.
Well, this gentleman mentioned that, your things are brought to you to research and discuss by the mayor. Am I wrong?
The mayor or trustees.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, about a learning curve, I think we've had the learning curve. The public gave us the learning curve. They said no. So if this does go to public referendum, I suggest that in addition to any public referendum, that there are a series of public meetings prior to any referendum that just appears on a ballot, because this thing needs to be fleshed out. Okay, that's all.
So, Mrs. Davini, thank you very much, and I enjoyed our time together at the Planning Commission when we did discuss all of these issues. And as I said earlier, we all had different opinions, and debates and challenges in a community is what it's about. And the civil ones are terrific. So, I did want to,
Rob Coleman.
I just wanted to make this point clear. This is a proposal. We're sitting here, we're not sitting up there. We have trustees who have to decide on the merits of this proposal, put it up for vote to initiate a public hearing, and whether they want to do that or not, put it through a public hearing. So all this group and many others for and against will come at that public hearing and have different views. The purpose of this meeting is to look at this, think about it, maybe have different ideas in the way it's proposed, or have questions about why are you thinking this way. So this is more of a planning commission meeting, which is, we're not sitting up there, we're sitting here with you. This is what we're thinking, and getting your input as to, hey, do we want to have a different recommendation for the trustees? So we're still in the draft recommendation phase. It's up to them to figure it out. After these are the people you've elected, but there will be public hearings on the topic for sure. Rob.
Thank you, Christian. I actually hadn't planned to speak on this topic, despite the shout out early on, but I did want to share a few thoughts. First and foremost, I'll say, I trust the wisdom of the voters in a referendum to tell us what they like, and we should abide by that. With respect to how this issue came up, I've thought about that some, but I don't really care. I think some of the other background that people should know is that the state of New York is generally encouraging municipalities at all levels to extend terms to 4 years from 2, 1 year to 2, 2 years to 4. And also to vote on even year cycles, by the way. So that's, having said that, they generally exempt villages from their mandates. I think I'm saying this right. I'm looking at my fellow trustees.
You are.
So we have more flexibility than towns or counties do. The state has some more carrots and sticks they can hold over others. But I did look at the list that you had. I mean, it looked like there weren't many villages that have adopted 4-year terms yet. A number of towns have, or none of the villages around us. It looked like East Hampton, Sag Harbor are still on 2-year terms, or at least weren't.
So East
listed.
Hampton Village is on 4-year terms.
They're
And
on
of the
4-year
33 in the
terms. Okay,
community. It's 33 in the county, half.
I did have. I wanted to. Is it possible, Jacob, to bring back up the chart that showed the years? No, not that one, but the plan of
The one after.
the chart. Yeah, this
There
one.
you go.
Is there a reason why the 3-year initial term wouldn't start in 27 as opposed to starting in 28? Because that would get us on an even year. It feels to me like, all things being equal, it might be better to be on an even year schedule.
Yeah, so this is a really interesting point. Why even versus odd year? Our thought on this commission is that an odd year moves you away from the narrative of regional and national elections and allows for you guys to have a voice out there when you go speak to resident about just local issue, and you focus in June of an odd year on just things that the residents are concerned about that are not regional or national, that could animate debates in the wrong way. You want your residents to really have your ear and you to do what you need to do.
There's another reason.
Yeah.
The reason to not go to 3 years at the June 27 election is it would appear to be self-serving to some people who may seek re-election then, and then would have a 3-year term instead of a 2-year term. So we wanted to make sure
Separate it more.
that
Yeah.
the 5 of you
Well,
have nothing in that game.
To Christian's point, I would just say there's some people who might say that given the state of elections and politics at other levels, it might be nice to be able to focus on local instead and avoid some of the noise, but I'll leave that to others to discuss. The last point I just wanted to make is, I've been in the village now for 36 years, and I've spent a lot of time, long time ago in East Hampton Village, more recently in Sag Harbor Village and Shelter Island Town, doing significant projects and having significant interaction with public bodies and observing how their boards, from the town or village board down to through all their land use boards, how they work, and how their village halls work and town halls work. In all those cases, my observation is that stability and continuity for employees, for key employees in particular, but all employees, comes more from the senior administrator, the administrator or the clerk, than it does from the elected officials. There can be a tone set, but in terms of actual stability and comfort and a sense of safety and productivity in their jobs, in those municipalities, in the Southampton Village for a lot of the time I've been here, that sense of comfort and stability is a tone set more by senior civil servants than it is by the elected officials. So I just throw that out.
Thank you. Mrs. Allen, great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad I reached out to you the other day to
I
come.
am too.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. So, our village residents are really smart, and they're going to know what's going on. And it's good that we're putting the vote in their hands. I think that's what you're proposing. So you can't get anything past our residents because they'll get it. Even, they may not get it right away, but they'll get it if they don't hear about things. Back to the FOIL issues, but we won't go there. But I have to change the narrative a little bit. First of all, I heard this culture of anxiety of having to be elected every 2 years. I ran for office several times, and yes, one spends time doing that, but you knock on doors and you really engage the community, and I think that's one of the most valuable things about running for office is, I've knocked on all of your doors, as a matter of fact, and hearing what you have to say. I think it keeps you really close to everyone. And given that it's in the summer, you get people that are here in the summer as well as the people that are here year-round. So that's just a different way of thinking. The other thing is the continuity. When I was a trustee, I was one of 5, and there were staggered terms, and there were people who were very upset about certain things. One was, I know this sounds trite, gas leaf blowers. So we put in the first restriction for gas leaf blowers, but we had a plan, and the plan was we were going to eventually do away with it. That wasn't going to happen in the first couple of years, but it was going to happen in 3 or 4 years. But the next mayor took that on and continued with it. So it wasn't as though the new person comes in and they just absolve themselves of what the previous administration and the policymakers and the planning commission and the master plan say. They actually build on it. So I don't agree with the narrative that you've lost continuity. I don't see that at all. And you've even mentioned reaching out to a former mayor. So you kind of are, you have institutional knowledge here. And if you're reaching out to those individuals, you keep that institutional knowledge. I will also add that what Rob Coburn said, Trustee Coburn said, is also very true, which is the trustees are part-time. and they're here to enact legislation and ensure commerce and safety of their citizenry, and they're here to help shape policy. But the running of the village is the senior village administrator and all the very senior civil servants, the police chief and, the volunteer fire staff. So I wonder if we're kind of mixing it a little bit, mixing apples and oranges. Trustees are there to enact legislation and a number of other things. It's in the code book. So anyway, the only other comment I'll make is glad that you're seeking input. I think you feel strongly about it, and I think there are other sides to it. So anyway, thanks for listening.
And this is the type of forum we want to have, and this is the best way to come up with best solutions and getting everybody's input. Anybody else on this topic? Yes, thank you.
I didn't plan on speaking on this topic. Monda Basile, Meadowgrass Lane, and I did not plan on speaking on this.
Welcome.
Thank you. I didn't even think about 2 year, 4 years, so I came in as a blank slate, which I think is good. Hearing everything and then getting my own feelings, I will tell you one of the most beautiful things about a 2-year term is getting the itch to get involved, to get connected to the community, get to know people, get to see what's going on. And so one of the things I'm concerned about it going on the ballot would be the average person that's going to vote, the 900 to 1,300 people that we have, wouldn't have any idea. It would be just everyone would check yes on that ballot box and not really know. And I think you miss a big part of like the getting to know people and caring about the community and having you more connected, because I do come most of the time in the summer and on the weekends. But these 2-year elections actually caused me to change my voter registration, really care about Southampton Village, and get involved. And I think if that 2-year went away, you'd lose that. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If there's nobody else on this topic, I'll let my co-chair move the
All right.
agenda to another interesting discussion.
All right, so this was point number 3, electoral reform with ballot proposal. The next item is public safety wireless tower at Windmill Lane Fire Station. So you may remember that this project started 2.5 years ago. It was triggered by the first responders, the fire department, the police department, and the ambulance department, who were complaining about not being able to make phone calls, not having black areas where they didn't get their two-way Motorola pagers and walkie-talkie working, etc. So we were asked to look at coverage both for the Motorola system and for the cellular system in the village. And we did a lot of work, a lot of research. We did a public RFP for people who are experts in the art of providing cellular telecommunication. We selected a tower builder. We looked at 50 sites within the village that we thought could work. We did propagation maps. We did all kind of complex analysis of the existing telecom equipment in the village, and we settled for a location which is right behind the Windmill Lane fire station, just where the parking lot behind the movie theater is. So that you have a little you have a little area, grass, and that's where the tower is going to be built. It's a tall tower, 125 feet. And there was a long process. We went in front of the planning board 2 or 3 times. We went in front of the zoning board of appeal a couple times. We went in front of the architectural board. And after getting all the approvals, the tower builder, Diamond Communications, applied for a permit. And the building department gave the permit a few weeks ago. So now we're entering the next phase, which is finalizing the engineering drawings, pre-construction meetings on site, ordering the tower, metal tower, and we expect construction to start sometimes in March and to have a tower erected by May, something like that. After that comes, well, it's simultaneous, but the most important part is the Motorola equipment, which is going to be all the way at the top of the tower for the first responders, walkie-talkie and pagers. Then you have the 3 cellular carriers, AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, who are hopefully going to want space on the tower and rent from the village. Typically, they will be paying something like $3,000 or $4,000 a month. So three carriers, that's $9,000 to $12,000. Call it $100,000 to $150,000 of revenues per year from the 3.
Elections.
I'm sorry.
That's 2 elections.
That's 2 elections. And then, but not really, because half of the revenues go to the tower builder and owner, and the village collects the other half. You'll also be happy to know that Trustee Zinanti did a job on the tower guys and obtained at the last minute a $500,000 check from the tower builder to the village. So that's the economics of this tower. Hopefully something, I'm sorry?
Kind of like it.
And so that's the situation. But understand one thing: they don't have to get on the tower. AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile. It's their decision. And as you have read in the newspaper, they have different plans. Sometimes they prefer to do what's called small cells, which they put on top of the wooden poles by a PSENG. And they have, it's a federal law. They have the right to do that on the right-of-way. So in many communities, for example, in the town of Southampton, Crown Castle with T-Mobile is putting up 200 of them in the next few months. And all over the country, basically, you're going to have these nodes all over the place, because nodes and macro towers broadcast different frequencies and different bandwidth and different capacity and different coverage areas. Anyway, it's complicated, but the good news is sometimes later this year, this summer, we should have at least 1 carrier up there. We should have the Motorola, and we should have our first responders able to come to the rescue of people when needed. So that's my update on the tower. Thank you. Do we need questions on this? Do we offer the public? Yes, I mean, it's a public meeting. If somebody wants to talk about towers, please. Ed, yes.
Yeah, just a question. What's the pros and cons between having a central tower versus the nodes that you say East Hampton is proposing?
Yes. It's not either or. They do different things. And most communities will end up with both. Yes, because your iPhone is working on 3, 4, 5 different frequencies. And when you're inside a building, you use certain frequencies which are broadcasted by nodes. When you're in your car driving on a highway, it's another frequency, which is the macro towers. And macro towers, they have a coverage radius of about 2.5 miles. So what you really need is macro towers every 5 miles. We have 3 or 4. East Hampton has 10 or 12. You'll have more. Basically, we all need, and the consumption of data is increasing exponentially. We all do it, our cars do it, etc. So eventually, you'll have more and more macro towers and more nodes. In New York City, I don't know if you've noticed, but they have built, overnight it seems, hundreds of these nodes that are 10 feet tall. The other thing is, the 3 carriers don't really they don't do things together. They do things for themselves. They have their own capex, they have their own timelines, they have their own frequencies, they have preferences in terms of markets, some, etc. So it's complex to speak, and we speak to all of them.
So we end up with a combination.
We'll have a combination, correct, yes.
I mean, for now, if you may remember, I think, yeah, you were trustee then and you voted for this. What we did, the commission recommended you guys a law on SWF, small wireless facility, to preempt under the FCC guide for a Crown Castle with nose to show up in your village and plop them in front of people's house in the right of way and piss everybody off. So we have coded that already. You guys voted on it. It's in our code, so we preempted that. But whilst we're sort of, Michelle is doing effectively project management on behalf of the trustees on this, and working closely with Len on this, for this macro tower to make sure we got everything in order and it moves along just like it's been done everywhere else. We know the nodes are coming up. Well, Michelle and I had a call with regional director of T-Mobile Northeast region on Monday or Tuesday, and we were discussing ahead with Crown Castle, what does T-Mobile think is Crown Castle is going to want in terms of nodes now that we're putting up a tower. And we know we're going to have a meeting with Crown Castle in early February. Who's going to tell us? We already know what they're going to tell us because T-Mobile told us they may only need 15 of them throughout the village in addition to the tower, if they go up on the tower, which we need them to do. We've seen some plans, a location of where these nodes could be. We need to discuss it with you guys in the community if we have a choice about that. So we're at a very early stage, but Michelle wanted to give you a heads up of our most recent meetings.
The way these nodes look like is it's a metal can on top of the PSENG existing wooden pole. Okay. Most people wouldn't even notice them. But at the bottom of the pole or mid-pole, there's another metal box which contains all the electrics, etc. So it's a little unsightly. The other thing is they can contain 2 carriers. We did a lot of research. They don't contain 3. It would be too heavy and too big. So it's possible that some of these nodes would accommodate T-Mobile and AT&T or T-Mobile and Verizon. But eventually, over the next 10, 15 years, all of the 3 carriers will have nodes, and probably also what's called small cells inside buildings, in shops or village hall, etc. So the 5G network, which is used more and more by everybody all the time, is going to be omnipresent.
I have another question.
Yes.
I have a residence in Manhattan, and I'm part of the board there as well. And on the top of the building, we have Verizon and T-Mobile, and I mean, we can hardly see it, but they have their antennas or whatever on the top. Instead of having these nodes, or maybe even the central, why can't we put those same type of things on top of buildings, like in the center of the village?
We already have plenty of those on top of the hospital, for example. Right. There's dozens of these antennas, etc.
Could go on top of the building.
Yeah, each antenna broadcasts differently, etc. So we'll have all of them.
Just to be clear on yours, I think what you're saying is you'd like to have this, what you're describing in your Manhattan co-op there on top, you do it in Village Hall. That's great, but it's only going to propagate within, what is it, 500 feet, if that?
Yeah, a radius of 200, 300 feet.
So if you have the tower where the macro tower and that ship of sail is going up, and we put it up there, you're going to cover for long distance all your northwest quadrant of the village, which has been a black hole up to now, and a real issue for our first responders to attend to 911 calls in that area, or even for 911 calls to be lodged, because no one has a landline anymore. I mean, the days some of us had a telephone in the kitchen, and that was what they gone. We all have a cell phone, and calling 911 is as an issue. So that'll solve the downtown district. Now, we could always put one on top of your house for node if you wanted to. You may get rent for it. We'll make sure to recommend your property to Crown Castle. Here's the point. We think there's probably, if they go down that path, we don't know, it's 15 of them through the village. Some resident are going to see them in there right away, right in front of them on their grass on the street. They're not going to like it. That's 15 resident out of 3,500 houses. But you're elected officials for everybody, so we need, and we're your advisors to figure this out. So we're working on it.
I'm just playing devil's advocate so that we can get more,
Yeah.
information from you so that we understand why
Yeah.
we actually need the central.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
But I'm
you
glad you're here on this planning commission.
There's
meeting,
something
because
else I
we've been
should tell
talking
you.
about this for a year and a half.
There's
at
there's
every
other
meeting.
good news. The town of Southampton is building a very tall tower at the transfer station, and one at Oakland Restaurant
Docks.
at the inlet. And so there'll be a moment in time over the next year or two when we will have a continuum of service signal from all three main carriers. And this is a safety issue foremost, but it's also a comfort issue for everybody. And then there's one more thing, Starlink. Everybody's dreaming about Starlink. So Starlink is coming. Starlink will work on your iPhone in areas where there is no alternative, like if you're in the desert in the western US or some areas of Long Island where you still don't have coverage. So you'll have Starlink, but it's not a cure for everything. It's good for certain areas. It doesn't have the same bandwidth, the same speed yet, etc. It's more expensive, etc. But it's coming, and I think we'll have a cocktail of all these systems. By the way, the police department here has Starlink as a safety issue if ever the cell system were to come down, like it did in a hurricane in West Virginia recently. We have Starlink so that we can at least have the police department communicate.
But don't forget, if you are in a building, you can't use Starlink because you need a clear sky to connect to satellite. So you won't be able to do a 911 call, or a first responder to going to your home who needs to connect with whatever. It won't work. When we had these discussions and public hearings on the topic of this cell tower, a lot of people came and said, why don't you do nodes, why don't you do Starlink? And we did a lot of work on this. And I think Michelle answered the question. It's going to be a mix of all of that.
I want Kimberly to talk. I just want to say on Starlink, one of the big issues is it doesn't propagate laterally. So this Starlink connection that the first responders have works on the vehicles when they need a backup, but when they're in a building or in a blind spot laterally, it doesn't actually work for true emergency communications in a lot of settings.
Spot on. Thank you. Kimberly Allen, thank you.
I have a question. Is it the node system? Is it possible for them to lowball a certain area because they only have a couple of people down there, or is it guaranteed that the coverage from the cell carriers will cover the entire village, beach,
So-
everything?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah,
Because
can you come up
unfortunately,
and, so
no, we-
Sage can
Actually,
catch
I'm
it?
speaking
Yeah,
now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, after.
all right, why don't we put some order to this? We'll let
So-
Mrs. Allen speak, and then
Thank
we'll repeat your question and answer it.
sorry, Robert. Let me just get this out because I'm standing here. Thank you. You'll regret having invited me to this meeting today.
Oh, no, I'm
I'm-
not. I'm delighted to
So-
have so many questions and people today, finally.
The antenna is ugly as heck, but we needed it, and we had so many drownings, and we had so many people in the western part of the village who couldn't get telehealth, and they couldn't get in touch with their kids, and they couldn't do work at home during COVID. So, all these other things weren't present at the time, and you had to go with what you had to go with. You have to start somewhere. On the aesthetic side, we live by the cell antenna over on Potato Field, which is right behind on Mariner Drive. It's ugly as heck, but I just want you to check on one thing aesthetically. They had at one point a flashing light that was so irritating. I don't know who spoke to them. They've now changed it.
There's no light.
That's a big deal that you don't have a light. That's a big
Yeah,
benefit.
so that's an FAA requirements. We looked into that.
Yeah,
It-
you
When
need
it's
to be
over 100,
250 feet
Okay.
tall, and we're 125.
Okay, so that's good.
yeah, we addressed this. This is a diamond tower that was put in about 20 years ago. It's a lattice. It looks terrible. You know the interesting part?
Can I just finish with my second part?
Thank you.
Sorry, I got your answer, and I don't want to waste everyone's time. The second one is finance. Is the $500,000 that's coming to us free and clear, meaning we can put that in our, or is it being used to construct the basis for the tower?
Free and clear, but probably a portion used for the Motorola equipment for the fire department.
Because as you know, Andrew Polaro and to some degree, we worked on the cell antenna over by Cooper's Beach, and they gave us $350,000, but that went to the construction of the cupola for the cell antenna. And we didn't make as much money because they on the revenues, and I don't know if you received revenues gross or net, or do you know?
We still get the revenues we checked.
Right, from that,
Yeah,
which should be, perennial, right?
yeah.
But the point on that is there's not that many telephone users, and that's how they there are not that many cell phone users, and that's how they calculate how much money you're going to get. So when you're in a place like this that's much more dense, you're expecting to get more revenue. But the key is whether you get gross or net revenue, apparently. I don't know if you know which one you're getting.
I do know. So the 500,000 is free and clear for the village to use as we wish. But again, a big portion of it will be used to purchase the Motorola equipment for the first responders. And the revenues that we receive from the carrier, the 3,000 or 4,000, is gross and is net. They don't take anything
Out of it.
this.
It's
So it's the same
50% of
number.
gross
Got
revenue,
it.
whatever they are on the ARPU.
Okay.
With an escalator of 2.5% over the 25-year
Okay.
life of the contract. And they maintain themselves. So the village doesn't pay anything, like every 6 months somebody climbs on the tower and the carriers have to make their adjustments, etc. We don't pay any,
You don't do
any
that.
of that. By the way, one more thing. This tower will allow competition against the Cablevision monopoly. As you know, we all have to pay 80, 100, 150 to Cablevision, which is the only game in town. But once you have these carriers and you have good coverage there, you can get 5G into the home and get rid of Cablevision, which means that the prices are going to be more competitive. Another advantage of having good 5G coverage all over the village.
I'm sorry, Rob Davini, please come
So
up.
I only have one little question that I'm sure will be.
me
Oh, that's
say what I wanted to say.
Wow, the eloquence was wonderful. The nodular system will cover 100% the whole village, correct?
Nothing is guaranteed and nothing is 100% in life. It'll do the
Well,
best.
death
but
is.
Wait. If you have trees, if you have a big problem right in front of your house, it depends. The signal degrades. If it rains, it degrades. If it snows, it degrades.
I understand, but I'm talking about geographically. You're going to
Yes.
cover this beach, the west beach, the east beach,
Yes,
even if there's not so many people that have that.
correct. Yeah, it's about 2.5 mile radius from the movie theater, so
Okay.
it covers the whole village.
So the nodule will not scrimp on a certain area?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So next is Southampton Village Partnership. Jeannie Zroulas is not here today, so we'll skip it for today.
Wait, sorry, she
she
did
sent
send me a message. Of course, I turned my phone off, I'm sorry. First of all, on Southampton Village Partnership, there's an article for all of you to read in a newspaper today, or whatever it was recently, and which describes the purpose of Southampton Village Partnership, which is to help shoulder the businesses in the shoulder season. Jeannie, as part of the commission, has been helping spearhead the SVP. She did, and I apologize, communicate. So she's unfortunately not here today. She had unfortunate death in the family. So, but she did communicate despite that to me, if I can get this cell thing to work, which is not, which is not. There it is. Let me see, Jeannie. Here we go. So, we're making progress on the SVP. Met with a smaller team on Monday, and we have a broad team meeting this Tuesday to review scope and website built. And Mr. Trustee Coburn obviously is there. We're engaged with local website creative agency to build a website in our continuing discussions to read the broader global goal. I mean, I think the point that she's trying to make is we have Trustee Stevenson and Coburn on the subject. We had nice coverage from the Southampton Press, so I want to thank him. It was a good article. And Jeannie, on our planning commission, is the liaison on this. The idea, which is in this article in the press, and she's saying to us that it is moving along to create this website for the as an initial phase for this SVP. So that's it on the topic.
So you think we're busy at the Planning Commission? You wait, because now, item number 6 is the SCWA water tank project at North McGee in Tuckahoe Woods. Jacob?
This is a public-private benefit collaboration between the township and the village. We have a property, since we've got the laptop here today, might as well put it up for everybody's benefit. This is a wonderful collaboration with the Suffolk County Water Authority to add additional water storage capacity, because the Prospect Street tower tank that we have only stores 1 million gallons, and at the height of the summer, when water use is at its maximum, there is very dangerous situations where that water storage tank is practically empty. So we've created a collaboration with the Suffolk County Water Authority to collaborate with the township and the village. It's good that Joe's here today, to have the engineers construct, build, pay the village rent on adding an additional 2 million gallons of water storage capacity, so we ensure water pressure for the village residents and some benefit to the township residents. And this is really yet another example to what Michelle's working on, a public benefit opportunity to have consistent water pressure, to not put the village residents at harm when we have situations of emergencies, if you will. And I just put this up. This is one of the renderings from the past. The design is predominantly below grade, and right now it's with our village attorney, the township attorney, and the Suffolk County Water Authority attorneys to create the agreement plan of the survey and the easement. And this is something I think benefits all of us here in the village.
If I may, this is in the woods, just north of the Tuckahoe School. The green area belongs to the village. Everything around belongs to the town, but there is an easement. You see that road that goes to the green area? So the town is giving the village that easement to be able to drive up there. And up there's already what's called the pistol range, where the Southampton Village Police Department learns how to shoot. And also the village uses it for storage, etc. And the round-shaped thing, that's the 2 million gallon reservoir. And then to the left, you see you have another area that's also SCWA. That's a pumping station where they pump water out of the aquifer. And so they're going to pump the water into the reservoir, and then from the reservoir, they're going to bring it to the different areas into the village. It's a $10 million project, entirely paid by SCWA for the benefit of the village.
Plus, we get to collect rent, and we have water pressure, all of us.
Water bills aren't going up after that.
No. I mean, they'll
Question. Usually these
they'll go
water
up,
towers are built high in order to utilize gravity in order to give the water pressure and move the water. Why is this below grade? Explain that.
This is really additional water storage capacity, and with the various pumping that will be installed within the property to continue to provide the throughput for the Prospect Street location, this is an add-on capacity, not just a primary capacity. So this just gives us an additional certainty out of having 3 million gallons for village and partial township use as needed, if you will. Because as you know, when the population spurges during the summertime, everybody's got their water usage for the pools and the lawn care, and it really puts us at some element of water pressure danger, if you will.
Can you describe, Jake, what Michael Anderson, you and I went to see up in the North Fork in terms of that installation to answer also the question from
Yeah, I
trustee?
apologize, that I was looking for an elevation design and I couldn't seem to find it. So it's a quite remarkable design, if you will. It's basically a very efficiently designed, predominantly below grade. I would say at best 25 feet above grade. So it doesn't have any kind of a visual impairment. I know we have some walking trails nearby on the north view to the bay. But we did do a site tour at the, was it September, I think it was, that we went.
Yeah.
And it was very, it was pretty smartly designed, if you will, very well secured, so that you don't have any kind of hazards, if you will. So where we are right now, our village attorney is collaborating with the Suffolk County Water Authority attorney and the township attorneys to propagate the proper easement agreement, if you will. And then once that's signed off, it comes to you, the trustees, and the next step would be a royalty payment agreement, which you, the trustees, would review and approve.
But Ed, to answer your question, it's on a hill. So
Right.
the fact that it's not on top of the hill,
Yeah.
but a little below and below grade, it's still,
It's still gravity, but is
we
it
thought it would be gravity, but we were told by SCWA
It's-
that it's pumping.
It's pumping,
Right.
yeah.
But is it
micropumps.
used to then pump to the water tower
Yeah.
on Prospect Street, so
Yeah.
it fills
This is
that up?
added capacity.
Okay, and then
yeah.
from there it goes to
Yeah.
the village?
Exactly.
It's added
Okay, that's what I
capacity.
needed to understand.
Where we're giving our village residents certainty of water capacity. Because the beauty about having this type of additional storage capacity is that, you know, it's sort of like energy use, right? When there's low energy use, you get to store it more. It's the same thesis here. You'll store more water, and when there are peak needs needed, you pump it out to the main primary, which is a Prospect Street location. They've been wonderful to work with. They've got great engineers. It's been a great collaboration, because I was particularly getting tired of that list that the co-chair of operation puts in Dan's paper, the culprits of the year, within our village. And
Water hogs.
Yeah, the water hogs. And I said, look, we've got to solve this problem. This is putting all of us under a bit of a stress level. So that's in the works.
So you understand, if there's a fire and the fire truck goes to the tower and there's no water, that's the problem, right? You need water, you need plenty of water at all times. Okay, the next item on our busy agenda is number 7, Public Tree Committee Update. Michael Anderson.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. Unfortunately, our meeting is coming up on this coming Thursday. We didn't have one this past month, but what we've been speaking of recently are two main items. One is we're trying to get a budget put together for maintenance, tree maintenance and tree removal. 2 different budget items possibly that we could send to the trustees. Ask for money because The trees in this village have not been touched or been minimally touched, let's put it that way, in my opinion. Wintertime now, if you can go all drive around, you can see the trees that really need to be pruned out and/or removed. It's something that we haven't really focused on in a long, long time, and it shows. So right now, we're trying to get some budget numbers together to give to the trustees and to the mayor. Also, we got together and we're talking about the Christmas lights on the trees. Apparently, they should be removed every year. No one has enforced that policy to remove the lights. So it killed about 10 dozen trees in our village right in the downtown area. So we're trying to create a policy where if the store owner or if the village puts up lights, they have to come down by March. I think it's a 90-day period that they have, that the lights can go on and have to come down. That's it with the tree,
Okay.
really.
Good.
Just a question, I'm sorry. At our last meeting, we talked about an RFP to select outside contractor to help out with it. Is there any discussion on how to get the RFP out, how to write it, who's going to be on the
No,
committee?
there's no
And who's going to spearhead this amongst you
We
lot?
went back, we're still looking for budget numbers, Christian. We sort of got delayed. Right now, we're looking for
Okay,
numbers
so it's
to
budget
propose.
first and then
Yeah,
process after.
Exactly.
Okay.
Sheila?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Sheila.
Sheila Pfeiffer, Hildreth Street. I'm glad to hear that the lights are going to come off. I've been puzzled to see them there still. But I think there should also be a recommendation that they not use staples into the tree to put them up whenever they do put them back up. It's not necessary. You can wrap a tree
That's what
with a wire.
From the knowledge I've been given, they wrap them.
No,
I've never
go
heard of
look.
staples.
There's staples there.
Okay.
And that's
That's good to
partly
know.
why the trees died. And we also know from research that's been done that light on, especially if it's on during the night, harms trees. In other words, it's not just a benign thing. I know everyone thinks, oh, it looks so pretty. But they need to go, right, they can't fall asleep. They need darkness to be able to reconstitute themselves just like we do. And I didn't bring all the documents about that, but it's, it's biological fact. So the current village code says lights out at midnight. The town has changed that to lights out at 10 p.m. And I think that your tree committee should be looking at, saying that those lights need to go out at some point. The trees need to sleep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's actually a good point.
Okay. Item number 9, deer management. Michael Anderson.
Okay. As most of you people probably do understand, we do have third year now of a deer management program. Suffolk County Deer Management has been hired by the village to institute this program. I guess this is the fourth year? Because this is the fourth year, because the first 3 years, we've gotten over 100 deer each year. 103, 109, and then last year, I think it was 113. So we've made quite a dent in the deer population. Right now, the numbers show that we have made a good dent. There's two things. The deer total now of 59 deer so far taken this year, which is less than historically what is shown at this time. But there's two things that I feel as though we're making progress with the deer, is that these numbers are down, but also Public Works Department every day or year would have to pick up dead deer on the side of the road killed by cars. They used to number in 30, 40 car accidents a year in the village. It's down to 15 to 16 this year. So that shows us that we're making progress in that regard. And that's
How
it.
many, how many deers do you think we have living in the village? 100, 500?
The density is
That's a
about
great
over
question.
100 per square mile, so it's over 650.
But
It
that
should be
number's
30 per
increased.
square mile, to give you a sense.
Decrease. Well, right now, we're up to, the fawn population, pretty much we're keeping it even with the fawn population now. That's what we figure, about 60 to 80 fawn each year. So,
Okay,
that's what Michael figures.
that's good. Item number 9, anybody interested in workforce housing?
Yes, we have a
That's why they're here.
All right.
I did 2 pieces of information that I'll share with the community today. One is a first-run analysis with the various programs from the village, township, county, and the state to partially help mitigate the cost to induce, maybe the strong word to use, a developer to create a workforce opportunity. And the second is the very obvious fact that the barrier to entry in our village to do any kind of workforce housing is very high. Our footprint is quite limited to begin with. So if you'll allow me, let me share with the community the initial analysis that I did, and then I'll go to the mapping, which I think quite a bit of the residents are here for us to digress on. So in a very broad stroke, we have several programs, the Southampton CHF, that provides about 150,000 to 250,000 per unit subsidy. There's a county program for grants of up to $1 million for units that are over 10. That's just not possible in our village. There's no footprint in any one of our lots that will allow it, nor I don't think you all being present here today would want to see it. My white paper is predominantly based on 1 to 4 units per lot where it's appropriate. Because we all know as village residents that half an acre to an acre runs $2 to $4 million. That already is a blockage. And then there's a New York Housing Acceleration Fund, which, so we have some limitations, but some mitigations on costs. So overall, at best, if it costs $700 hard and soft costs for sake of argument and measurement, there's about a 20% grant component saving, about $140 a square foot. And this is just an original rough cut that I'm sharing with our village planner, Curtis Highsmith, and I'm happy to share it with the community. I shared it with Rob because he and I are working on this. So with that as a precursor, let me put up the second piece, and thank goodness I brought the laptop today. And that would have bear with me 1 second, folks. Not this. Here we go. I think this is what every, at least those who are present here today are concerned about. On a good day, we can at best build, and I'm going to use an approximation, and this is village-wide, 8 to 20. And I'm being incredibly optimistic around the village of any kind of workforce housing. Now, when you say the term workforce housing in a village like Southampton, you take it with a grain of salt, because the cost of the lot is very high, to build is very high, And with about $140 cost mitigation to a developer, it's a tricky proposition to begin with, but something worthwhile looking at, because those of us who have children who've gone to school here and grown up here really can't afford to live here as well. So this is a mapping that was shared by our village planner, and thankfully Alex is here today. And so this is what I wanted to share with you, because I did two things. One, quantify is, all right, if we put all these programs together that we're talking about, if I'm an altruistic developer and I want to make some kind of a housing for a teacher, nurse, fireman, whoever, what am I going to say with this program? And my initial study suggests at best $140 a square foot. That doesn't include the $2 to $4 million it'll cost to buy a lot or whatnot. And so that's what I wanted to share with everyone. And this map is predominantly from the BFJ planning that was done from the prior administration to today. So all we did was we took what the village plan, master plan was that we were all present for and predominantly got voted in.
We weren't consulted.
That the BFJ master plan, that was from the prior administration. Where we had the artistic center and what we want to do for certain workforce housing and so on and so forth. I may be mixing my apples and oranges, but I'm going by from what the master plan was done and then what the recent study that the BFJ memo was prepared under this current administration. So there are two primary aspects to consider. One is, even if one were to build, it's going to be $140 a square foot savings. Is that a material number? Well, that depends on the individual who wants to build workforce housing. Is there going to be a developer who will commit $2 to $4 million to buy a half an acre, quarter an acre, third of an acre? It really remains to be seen, if you will. How many can we build around the village? It seems to suggest 8 to 10 in aggregation. And does that move the needle? It really doesn't. But you know, the question is, do we want to take a bite out of the apple one bite at a time? Or do we want to scrap and just forever be that village that does nothing to address what is already is impacting us anyway? That's causing us the strain of the inbound and the outbound traffic and the affordability, if you will. So that's what I wanted to share with everyone.
Jay, can you address the HRO on Hampton Roads? I know a lot of residents have been hearing things. I've read some of the emails that were circulating on the topic. Could you share with the residents who are here and concerned, what are we talking about here?
Well, I look at it strictly from a footprint, and Alex, please step in and correct me if I'm wrong. This is a corridor that, through the consultants that were brought in, that seems to be plausible to do a rezoning for workforce housing. However, good point. However, great, but what's available? Well, almost negligible amount, if you will.
What about the property near the 7-Eleven? That's a much bigger lot.
That's an excellent point. There are a couple of unique wild cards that may come on board in the next 2 to 5 years, including the one that we're all hearing about, that the township may move out of their main facility, and that could be a prime for those of us 55 and older, and age in place one half of the building, and workforce housing on the other half. So there may be some unique wild cards. why this particular zone and the other zone, as you see here? Well, that's what was recommended. Is it correct? Well, we can all discuss it, right?
And who recommended it? Bill Manger?
Well, no, this came through the BFJ memo, the planning advisory entity that was hired, and they had done the original master plan from the prior administration as well. So I suppose the current administration just asked them, oh, by the way, can you help us crystallize a potential rezoning, and where do you see that potential viability? And the recommendation was made this particular location. Now, that doesn't mean it's cast in stone, if you will, because even if it is what it is, the barrier to entry is material enough where it really has to attract that unique developer, if you will. I mean, to commit $5 million all in to construct something and then to have the scenario where it's $1,800 to $3,400 rent, that's going to take the unique individual and the unique entity to commit to it.
Does it have to be in the village?
That's an excellent question. Look, it's a very good question. We're beholden to you as your planning commission for the village of Southampton. So we look within our village and see what do we have. And you're absolutely correct. We're a very tight grid. We're only 6 miles. We don't really have a lot of anything. The question is, what next? And there's a township, and we all recall what was trying to happen in County Road 29, and that was an issue in of itself, and then some other developments that the township's doing. So this is really just a reassessment to see what potentially may work. But all I'm trying to communicate is that even if we're looking at within our village, we're so expensive. With all of our great phenomenal grants, that at least we have some kind of grants, if it costs $700 hard and soft costs, and Rob and I do developments around the country, we're really only mitigating $140.
Can I invite you to speak at the microphone? I know there's a lot of concern of residents on a particular location on Hampton Roads. I've
Yeah.
read the emails and the concern, and
And let me just add one other point. We're in no position as a village, nor can we, to do anything sizable with great density. Because at the end of the day, we have to get approval from Suffolk County Health Authority, because unlike West Hampton, we have yet to put in our wastewater sewage system as well. So that's another potential aspect I wanted to share. At best, we can do some micro units, 1 to 4, and if we put it all the jambalaya together, on a good day, maybe 8 to 20 units around the village, and that's really it.
Sir, did you want to speak? And
I mean, all of us back up to that property.
yeah. So maybe I'll have a village planner who's aware, Alex Wallach, come to the podium to help us out. He's aware of this particular discussion.
Sorry, can you lay out the framework as to why some people are here? I know you've invited Alex. And we've spoken, Alex, about this topic, because in some of the information that we foiled from the master plan and the development of it, we saw an email between the mayor and BFJ focusing on a property adjacent to Osborne Street. It's the one on the north part of Hampton Road, and it backs 245, and it said, please make sure you speak to the consultants about this. The mayor's very interested in this property. So then, a few years later, and I can show you the email, we've seen it, it's in our stack. And then a few years later, the proposition comes forward to shift that area from office district to now workforce housing. So then I met with Alex in the building department, and he carved out what could potentially happen on that property, and it could be up to 14 workforce housing units on, what is it, Alex? 1.8, 2 acre and a half, 2 acres, something like that.
I think it's an acre.
So there are a lot of barriers to entry, but there's always somebody that can come in, and I think it's just heightened everyone's
Okay.
concern. And on top
I
of that,
think 14 would be a stretch.
well,
Yeah,
Doesn't matter if
I
it's
have-
four.
yeah.
was
yeah.
it less than that?
Right.
Okay, so even if it was less than that, 12, I
Yeah.
mean, we don't want to make Hampton Road County Road 39. And the village faces a real housing need. But I guess my question is, we've spent a lot of effort on this. We're kind of missing it strategically. What's been the win is ADUs, accessory structures, putting apartments in your own home or putting them in, your, not a pool house, but in, your back homes. And we have a lot of units like that. And why is that a win-win? It's a win-win for multi-generations. It's a win-win for people who want to age in place. And it also distributes housing throughout the community. So it's just befuddling that this came about, and then if there's no takers and there's no barriers to entry, why did we spend all this time on it? Just doesn't make sense.
All we help do in the planning commission is help crystallize a potential policy benefit for the village. It doesn't make it right or wrong. We have, if the thesis is, do we want to address the problem? Yes or no? And if it's a yes, then how do we address the problem?
And that's true, and I don't mean it as a criticism, because you've actually done some very, very good work, and this is extraordinarily helpful. When I was a trustee, I attended many planning commission meetings because your research and your thinking and your ideas are so terrific. Laura Davini left, but that's what you learn about. But I guess the question is, we really do need it, and speed is of the essence, and how come we didn't address this piece? We have it on our code books today. Why don't we go back and say, why isn't it working? Why are we starting this brand new thing and creating the possibility of something that's really disruptive to the neighborhood? That's all I have to say.
Alex, do you want to come and address some of the issues of ADU, particularly that have been raised, and the take-up of ADU, and sort of generally this? Thank you, Alex.
Sure. So, as was mentioned, ADUs, accessory dwelling units, are permitted in our code pursuant to a provision that allows them in primary dwellings. In the 4 years that I've been planning director, nobody has applied for one. So we suspect that there isn't a great demand. I think a lot of that has to do with the affordability and the fact that some houses are more seasonal than year-round. So there's a lot of challenges to that. In terms of this study, I could say this was, like you mentioned, this was an outgrowth of the comprehensive plan. It's not a rezoning. It was adopted by the Board of Trustees in December, and what it did, it replaced a part of the code that previously allowed for multifamily throughout the office districts, to replace it with a different type of small multifamily if a portion was used for workforce housing. We hired a BFJ to help us with the environmental analysis to help determine what the impact would be. So they, as part of that review, they did a build-out analysis and thought conservatively, based on existing conditions, maybe we'd get an increase of 8 units across the whole village. It wasn't very optimistic that there would be a lot of workforce housing to come out of it. That was done under the proposal before the trustees continued to work on it, and so it's become a little bit more restrictive even since then. There's no specific plan for any specific property in this corridor right now. Nobody has applied for anything. If they did apply for something, they would have to get approval from the health department, which has much stricter density limits than the village, particularly on the north side of Hampton Road. So the number of units would be very, very small. It would have to go to the planning board for a site plan review. It would have to go to the zoning board of appeals for a special exception, and it would have to go to the architecture review board to review the architecture. The idea is that you'd have a building that looked like a single family home that potentially could have 2 units, just like an accessory dwelling unit. So far, we've had one person interested. They were told by the health department that they couldn't move forward, which is unfortunate because they don't have the septic capacity. As part of that study that BFJ did, they also looked at what impacts that would have on traffic. And what was interesting, it might be a little bit counterintuitive, is that for every workforce housing unit, you end up with a reduction in traffic because it's displacing an existing office. And the office that is there now, that is permitted and will continue to be permitted because the zoning, the office zoning did not change, generates more traffic than residential uses. But the underlying uses throughout Hampton Road and North Sea Road, which are the two corridors shown on the screen that we sometimes call the office districts, the office uses were not changed, so those can continue to be used for offices. New offices can be built there, existing offices can remain, but the code change slightly modified the proposal for housing to try to encourage some workforce housing to be built, but we know the impact village-wide will be very, very small, and the number of units on any particular property will be very minimal.
Please.
How many units on 425?
I'm sorry?
How many units on 425?
There, like I said, there's no specific proposal for any property.
No, not proposal, but if someone were to go the full, take the full advantage of it, how many units can fit on 425?
I don't have that information. It
245.
it would be depend on whatever the health department would allow. So it would be a very, very small number.
Aside from the health department, just because people can build septic and whatnot, but what?
That accounts for septic.
Okay, so what was the number? Didn't we sit and come up with a number, and that number was the fully built-out area?
Like I said, I don't have calculations on a particular property because there's been no proposal, but there's nothing that's going to approach that number of units on any particular property. It's not feasible.
The health department is not going to let you.
And there's no plan, even if we do have a sewer district, to sewer that corridor. So that you could do a theoretical calculation based on zoning densities, but that's not what is going to be built there.
When I did my initial rough cut, please come up. I really tossed out anything above 4 units because I just didn't see it because of the Suffolk County health, and rightly so. We just don't have our sewage in place, right? So my whole thesis is based on 1 to 4 at best.
Yeah, and something I should.
Wherever we scattered around the village.
One of the underlying assumptions also when we did the build-out analysis was that they would be very small units.
Yeah.
The larger the units are, the fewer that you're allowed to do per housing unit.
You've been waiting.
Hi, Sheila Pfeiffer again. 2 caveats before I talk. I have an appointment, that's why I'm going to talk and run. I'm sorry to do that. And the other thing is that I really am completely naive about housing. But I am really puzzled why there would be some complaints about Hampton Road having multiple family units when you have 4, if not 5, condo communities just a few yards to the east.
Right. There are a couple of condos.
And I know about one of them because of the work done on the replacement septic. It has 38 units in it. And then that's only one of those 5. So Hampton Road has always been a place where there have been multiple family dwellings. So I just don't understand this. Just because a lot has stayed empty for a certain amount of time doesn't guarantee that it's always going to be empty. If you want it to stay empty, buy it, right? I mean, this is the village. Hampton Road has always had that kind of housing. I mean, I've lived here I haven't lived here 50 years.
Not for
Yes, I
workforce
have.
housing. There's an entirely different aesthetic.
That is not true. Do you know that Forest Hills was originally built to be workforce housing? Have you been to Forest Hills?
Yeah, it's beautiful. But
Yeah, and that's how Atterbury conceived it.
And
I mean,
also-
this
and I
is
also lived in England, and I can tell you, there's nothing been done with the old post office. Now that
Right.
Rite Aid is gone, they could do it the way they do it in Europe, where they build.
I totally agree with
right
you.
in the village.
I
Doesn't
to-
have to be out.
I totally agree, but you're saying it doesn't have to be, I mean, there's already multiple communities on Hampton Road. I think the post office and the bank next to it should be knocked down and they should build commercial with apartments above. I agree,
Exactly
but
right,
apparently
and that could be the workforce
someone said
housing
it can't
or
be done.
You still haven't answered the question.
I
about why
doubt
the-
I doubt a great deal. Just to hopefully I doubt at all any builder's grade development would be allowed in our village. It just won't fly. We wouldn't allow it. Not the Architectural Review Board, not zoning, because we just wouldn't allow it as a community. We wouldn't do it.
Even before you get to those
Well, then this shouldn't
organizations,
even be a discussion with what you
the
just
health
said.
department is not gonna allow it.
But so we shouldn't have
It's just-
workforce housing in
I-
the village, period.
Have
If
you
live
tried
in New
to
York
go through
City-
the health department? I have. There's no way that you can put multi-zone housing because you don't have a sewer
That's what you say, and it
system.
starts with a conversation like this.
And it stops right there. So, I mean, we have, now if the town chooses, or the village chooses to go with a sewer.
Mrs. Pfeiffer, I know you've got to run, so
Yeah, I'm
thank you.
sorry. I would
did
love
wanna-
to stay,
No,
but
I appreciate it.
unfortunately haven't
You can
been
watch
today,
it
but-
at home on the recording on the YouTube, the rest of it. Thank you for the question. Trustee Coburn, who's very involved, wanted to join us.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Well, just a couple things. Hugh Burns, I live on Osborne Avenue. I've been there since 23 years. My wife and I had 2 kids. And there's 2 things that concern me. First of all, I want to say that I completely understand the issue with workforce housing or affordable housing out in the Hamptons. I think I'm a little taken back, and I think some of us are, that this is sort of like the first we're hearing about it. I understand there's plans, but there's been no direct communication to our part of the village. So we're kind of coming up to speed on that. And so I'm wondering if there's a vehicle for, us to be communicated with in a more direct fashion, number one. And number two, I guess I'm struck by sort of what is a little bit of a fundamental contradiction in what you're saying, which is on the one hand, well, don't worry about it because we can't really, build a lot of these units, which is fine. But the flip side of that is, as I think you conceded a minute ago, you're not moving the needle. I mean, we all see the traffic, on coming in and out of the, people can't live here and work here. I get that, and I'm sympathetic to it. But the problem is, this isn't going to change that one iota. One iota. It's going to hurt the character of our neighborhood, and it's not going to help the problem. So that would be my perspective.
Thank you. Trustee Coburn?
Thank you. I have to dispel a notion that seems to be floating around here. Any workforce housing that's built here is going to look like any other building might look for any other purpose. It's subject, as has been said before, to architectural code and review. It's subject to planning review. So it's not as though you're going to have something that screams workforce housing. We also need to understand that workforce, in our case, in this market, in many cases are households that are earning 90 to even a couple $100,000. They're solid middle-class people. They just can't afford the housing. So whatever, I'm sorry?
Outside the village.
Okay. There is a push in this concept right now to get every community to do its part, because the housing issue, first of all, we're the most affected by the lack of affordable housing. The East End is the most affected by the lack of affordable housing. But there's a push generally in the state and nationwide to get economically stratified and commingled housing into every community, because that's how you keep a workforce. That's how you keep the services, the emergency services, the municipal services, the private services, the restaurants, is not to have people sitting in a car for 2.5 hours in the afternoon and an hour on the way in every day who live 40 miles away. It's not, you can make a point, go ahead, and then I'd like to make a few more.
Sorry, we can't.
Can you please come up to the, yeah.
We can't.
Okay. Let me make a few points and then we can have some back and forth. So it's not as though the buildings that would be contemplated, first of all, I also have to say, the village isn't doing anything. And we're not going to developers saying you should do this. We've created enabling legislation for private market forces to come in and make proposals. And those proposals, if they move forward, are going to be subject to the review of multiple village boards, as you've heard, for a number of things, including aesthetics. The office districts, which Alex described, were created, I think, in the 60s initially. The HRO is Hampton Road Office District, and the OD is the office district, the first office district. And that was at a time when there was a belief that the village in our region was going to need more office space. And that grew, and that belief held true for a period of time, and then office generally, and office in places like this, began to peak, and the demand simply isn't there. But there is, in theory, there is an ability for those offices still to be developed for future office uses. And as was pointed out, offices generally are a higher traffic use than even a multifamily residential use. So this actually, will, in theory, provides in theory for less traffic than what is currently zoned. And by having more workers work locally, we may not move the needle, but we do our bit in moving the needle overall to reduce commuter traffic. I wanted to address ADUs. I've spent a fair amount of time on this, and I'm going to come back to you guys shortly with some tweaks to our existing ADU code. As Alex has said, no one's taken it up in the years that it's been on the docket. East Hampton Village has a little better code. They've only had 5 ADUs created under their code, and it's pretty generous. Their code is, if we're here on the spectrum, they're over here on the pendulum of real permissiveness on ADUs. They've had 5 units. But more importantly, ADUs and what we're talking about in workforce housing, while they are first cousins, falls under the general umbrella of workforce housing, address 2 different user groups typically. ADUs very typically address family members or domestic workers in a household. And it's frankly administratively difficult to have the person who works at a garden center or works at a restaurant make an arrangement in someone to live in a unit in someone's house. It's very difficult to make that connection. So that's not typically the workers who are going there, the nurses and the teachers. It's usually a family member. It just gives an additional occupancy permit for a different family unit or a different living arrangement. Whereas what we're talking about in workforce housing is intended to address not only first responders and teachers, but people who work full-time in businesses and stores and other things here in the village. But I guess I really wanted to make sure people understood it's going to be the market that determines this. The village isn't pushing any particular project. And as you've heard multiple times, both for our own review and because of the county review, there are significant checks and balances on the density of what will appear. I did just want to mention communication. It's not in any zoning issue or any municipal law, it's simply not feasible for the village to go out and knock on doors, or it's not cost, it's not.
This is the age of the internet.
Understand.
Numbers.
So let me address.
And a letter?
So the letters are expensive to get out. Let me just tell you what has gone on. Let me just tell you what has gone on here. There was a notice back in June for a public hearing in July. There have been 4 public hearings at the Board of Trustees. There was a 2-hour plus discussion at this board in October, most of which were covered in the paper in advance. So I saw one email that said, this is all happening in the middle of the winter. This began in the middle of the summer with everyone here. And we will do our best to do better about getting the word out. But it's not for lack of trying. It's been mentioned in the paper. It's been on agendas, been on, I think, as many as 7 agendas at the Board of Trustees and at this board over the last 8 months. So
nobody contacted us. We're all sitting here because none of us received anything until this was approved.
The village doesn't notify individuals or groups of people. Yeah?
You know the expression, not in my backyard. If you were living there, if Bill Manger were living there, you wouldn't want this.
I would welcome workforce, you're wrong about that. Please don't assume my motivations. I would welcome workforce housing in my backyard. I would. I think a lot of people would. No? Do you?
So I'm in real estate.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of developers, development,
Yeah.
nationally, internationally. I'm not speaking from left to right. 2 houses next to each other. He has a house here, and next door, the lot has to be sold, there has to be a profit margin. If there's going to be a workforce housing, those income numbers, those NOI numbers are less. That value of that land next door to you is kept at a different number. When he wants to sell his house or refinance his house or something, that completely changes.
Has that happened on Major's Path where the workforce housing went in? I don't think it has.
My point's a major pet. Why not down,
No,
which is
but
bigger, and why in the village?
But let me take your metric.
Can
because
I
you s-
suggest
yeah.
you please come up because
Yeah.
we need to
I'm gonna-
memorialize.
I'm gonna-
we need to memorialize it, and our audiovisual tech can't capture your
Hi, I'm
concerns.
Neil Slaughter. I've lived here for 32 years, and I was a teacher. I was a university professor for 40 years, but the last 25 before I retired was with Long Island University. So I've lived there for a long time, and there was a single-family house there, and it was torn down because it just fell into ruin because it was just rented out to a bunch of burned-out hippies, essentially. And nothing was ever built since then, and I know why, because unlike Mrs. Riley's property, and she's a real estate lawyer who lives further west, the very next property further west, she had access to the cul-de-sac. So she was allowed to take that front building that faced Hampton Road, which became her office, and to build another building behind it, which has access to the cul-de-sac, which is where my neighbor over here lives. That piece of property, there is no access to the cul-de-sac. So the lady who bought that, who was a dentist, wanted to do the same thing and found out she didn't have access to the cul-de-sac, and it sat ever since. So this is how these things start. And now, what happens? Why cannot people look at other potential places, some like I've just suggested? What about that big lot? Ever since I've lived here, there's been that huge vacant lot near the 7-Eleven up
Most of
there.
that's owned by CPF, and they can't be developed.
What's CPF?
Community Preservation Fund? The Town Community Preservation Fund.
Open land space.
What about Rite Aid?
And what about Rite Aid? And what about the building that's right here in the village that's a derelict for probably 40 years?
Well,
I mean,
if
what about the post office?
if
Nothing's
a-
happened
If
there.
a developer shows up and they're agreeable with the 20% hard soft cost savings, more, of course, we'll take it into consideration as a village with the trustees and the mayor.
What about on the other side of the highway where there's a
I-
lot more property?
I don't think, all this is suggestive enablements. I don't think it's fixated on this particular concern lot that you're worried about. I don't think there's anything nefarious going on at all. We can hit different locations, but somebody has to step up. All we did was quantify what that hard and soft cost mitigation is. What this additional addendum that was done by the planners was, these are potential zones, and you have every right to say and make suggestions for other locations. So please communicate that to the building inspector and put it up for planning board members to consider. So this is a very dynamic discussion, if you will.
Well,
But
that land that's being preserved.
To Robert's point, there's been a general national consensus that from state, county, city, and our local level, that we have to do some type of effort to address the unaffordability of the younger generation and those of us who are past the 55 and don't want to live in very big homes anymore as well. So this is our first cut. It's not perfect. So we obviously welcome your input. But at the end of the day, we're here to address within our village home community where potential sites are.
Back to what?
Can I
Yeah, go ahead.
Here's what I would argue. I would argue that you are representative of this community and the people in this community that pay taxes. And what you're saying is you want to try to solve a national problem by doing by subsidizing something or allowing the subsidization of something, right? Which allow people to do this. It's going to drive down the property values of the people that you do represent in favor of some people that you hypothetically might represent in the future, but not people that you represent currently. So I think that's a dereliction of your duty, quite frankly. I mean, you're helping some unknown person, and you're not helping the people that you represent. And I understand there's a national problem, but a couple of units here in Southampton, we've said it a number of times, it's not going to solve it. It's not. There might be other things that might solve it. But a couple units in Southampton, you said it yourself, is not going to make a darn bit of difference.
You're very well entitled to your concern, and we understand it. All we're doing is we're making an effort within the boundaries of our
But I want to hear
village.
you respond to my point.
Yeah.
What are you doing to help your current constituents? I understand what you're doing to help other people. What are you doing to the people that live in this town, pay taxes in this town? I have a lot invested in my home. It's my biggest asset. I've lived there for 20 years. I put a lot into it. It's a 100-year-old house. I maintain it. I maintain the yard. I maintain the look of the neighborhood. My kids grew up here. I mean, they play here. I want to make sure, our neighborhood maintains a certain character. Not because I have anything against people who teach or firefight or anything like that. But I don't feel that my interest is being represented by this group. And I'd like you to explain to me how you feel you're representing my interest and the interest of the other people here, as opposed to solving a hypothetical problem for other people who don't live here.
Well, it's not a hypothetical problem. We all have direct family members who work in the village, including myself, including my son who's sitting here, who went to Southampton High School and grade school, and I was on the Southampton School Board and helped pass the bond where I hope your children are benefiting from. So it's not necessarily hypothetical. Are we limited? Yes.
Well, but
because,
you're
are
saying
we
they're the
limited?
people.
Yes, of course we are, because we have a very limited footprint. It's really not a hypothetical problem, because it is a micro-village problem. A lot of us who've been here for several generations have already lost family members, including my direct children who can't afford to live here. So is this the best remedy? Perhaps not. All we've done is address what can partially be mitigated. Now, where those particular plot buckets are, that's open for discussion, right? That's why we're here together, having the discussion.
But I thought you were saying you were trying to help people that couldn't live here. And now you're saying you're helping people that do live here?
They want to live here.
Want to live
Right,
here.
but you don't represent those people. You don't represent those people.
Right, so
Because they don't live here, right?
Well, look,
I'm done.
your
I
concern.
just would like to hear a response to that.
Your concern is memorialized on record. Is the best I can say.
Well, hold on. I feel like 4 years ago we spoke about something similar. I hear your concern, and I am with you in that some of my properties were impacted. And we can sugarcoat this and call it workforce housing, low-income housing. And we all know the impact of that. And I don't know too many people that would raise their hand and say, yeah, bring me low-income housing right next to my house.
It's not low income, sir. It's not.
I know, you can call it moderate income. There's a lot of phraseology that we can use around this. That's the bottom line. This is a problem that has been addressed and talked about by many different municipalities around the country, if you will. There have been some solutions that seem to be making sense. And perhaps, and one of them is, with every new development, like in New York City we see it, an X%, and that could be 10% or of any new development is allocated to that. And of course, in New York City, when you have large buildings, you have 10% of those units, let's say, allocate to low-income housing. That becomes, it's a great solution for the workforce employees because they integrate with the higher incomes, and you don't really see, you live in a community that's, that's really
We have
one.
that in the village already.
Yeah.
We do have that in the village.
Yeah, and those,
Yeah.
and those are,
We have that already. Let's say if we have an opportunity to do workforce of 4 units, 2 can go to workforce. And just to clarify, it's not low income. The AMI in our footprint community is very high. It's more like $140,000, $180,000 a year, and people still can't afford it in the village. It's not Section 8. This is different. But to your point, and accurately so, in fact, one of our trustees wanted 100%. And our suggested formula was maybe 50 market rent to convince an altruistic developer to spend $4 million on a plot, spend another $3 million on construction, and do 2 of the units at $5,000 to $10,000 a month, and the other 2 units at $1,800 to $2,400 a month. So we already have that baked in the village code.
Okay.
No, go.
I did some research, and other communities have quickly expanded their housing supply faster and more economically by prioritizing ADUs and also by reusing existing buildings, homes and vacant business and office space, and investing in sewers for the downtown so that you can build apartments over all the retail spaces. So that's all we want. I guess it's just a surprise that we spent this much time on what sounds like will never happen. So this is a moot discussion in some ways, because it sounds like you're going to get 10 to 20% max reimbursed and it'll take 10 years. But we never had this discussion, so that's why I think the hair on their backs is up. But having said that, I really do think there's a lot of opportunity. And the town has had a lot of win-wins with their ADUs and their accessory structures. I mean, I have a son who just came back from spending 8 years in the military. I'd love to have him stay here. It's so nice. He's looking, an hour and a half up island. So, but people in the city now, in all of the 5 boroughs, are looking at basement apartments in buildings where half of the basement floor is above ground. Not the whole basement. You have to have some natural light. So we need to think about those things rather than what seems like not moving the needle and is a pipe dream. That's all.
Thank you.
Hi. Obviously, I'm emotional about the topic because, let me just say, I'm hearing something. I love being in the village. We all have children. We all want our children to be near us. But I feel it's not only in Southampton Village. We're only a 6-mile radius. It's small. But there's so many areas. I'm talking about workforce or children or family. You can go right outside and there's many various options at different levels. And it just doesn't happen to Southampton Village. It's even outside in the city. Somebody might live on Park Avenue, but their child can't afford to live there, so they have to move to Red Hook in Brooklyn, for example, or Williamsburg. This is not like isolated to just Southampton, to the 6-mile village that is mostly suburban in its own way, that you want to add this workforce housing. And many people also travel to work an hour. That's not unlikely. If you live in Westchester, for example, and travel to the city or whatever, Sarasota, my friend's daughter had to move to get the big house that she wanted, but she couldn't live in the neighborhood where we go. So to put it into a neighborhood that people have chosen to come here and do it, it really takes down the value, like it or not, and you're incenting a developer. Once you're saying, we don't care, but we're going to give incentives. Oh, we're going to give you a tax incentive, you're going to get a this incentive, you're going to get that incentive. So, of course, then it's going to make it affordable for the developer to develop here. But I agree with the things that you're saying. ADUs, allow maybe some 2-family homes, allow maybe some additional income. So somebody that says, need a house for $600,000 to $1 million. We're in the New York metro area in its own way. We're not in, middle of nowhere, but that's kind of the price range. But if you allow them to have a rental income with $600,000 to $1 million house anywhere, or $1.5 million, and you let some rental income come in the basement and they pay $3,000 a month or $2,500, that really brings down the cost basis by a few $100s. I don't know why we have to do a workforce housing project per se. It's almost, it really is disingenuous to the people.
We do have ADUs on the books already.
Yeah, but
there hasn't been too many takers.
But this is so unfair to people who have, pre this decision, come into, like when I was picking to buy here, I don't know, over 30 some odd years ago, I specifically said, I want to be in the village of Southampton. It was a decision that I made, whether it was for a beach parking pass, whether it was just, I decided to be in the village, even though I got less for more. I mean, yeah, less for more money. That's where I want it to be. If I wanted more or a little bit less, I would have gone just a little bit north of the highway, would have gone to one of the, there's still options that even for someone, if your family, you're saying, wants to live here, you can still just go outside. You don't have to be in the village per se. We're so tiny. It's Southampton Village. It's always been, that's what you pick. That's what you notice when you're shopping. Anyway, there's a lot more I want to say, but I'll leave it to other
Thank you.
people.
This is very
I just think
helpful.
it's
I just
really
wanna-
unfair. It's really unfair. Like, I would have picked to go somewhere else and gotten a way bigger home at the time with a big pool. I have a tiny little house just to be in the village.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
I just appreciate your time on this, and I just so that
This is becoming a very interesting discussion,
Yes.
and I see we're running into unintended consequences from a policy decision that we made that we thought would be benefiting the community as a whole. And you know, when we looked at this as the office district, where you really don't have any residential building. It's really office and open lots and stores and whatnot. So.
There's houses everywhere.
And the main office district, yeah, and the office district. So we really did not think or did not realize that in fact we would be impacting actually residents by doing this. So maybe we need to carve this out a little bit better. That is to look at the areas that we looked at as the development for the affordable housing and make sure it is not in proximity to residences, and try to do something that is, let's say, balanced so that we can have affordable housing without affecting properties, and I understand that.
And if I could just say one other thing, I just, you know, and I do hear what you're saying. I really just would hope that you would think about, you know, the impact on the people that you actually represent, and also, you know, this area. I mean, this is not the fancy pants part of town, okay, where we are. You know, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not the high end, you know, Hampton. You know what I mean? This is it's a very modest part of town. Yeah, and so, like, you know, this is, if there is a diminution in value, it's real money to us.
Okay. Look, this is a really interesting conversation. I just want to put
like Ms. Riley, one more.
I'm sorry?
Ms. Riley.
Thank you for indulging me. Perhaps I could shed a little light on the matter. The woman who owns 245 has made herself very public in the neighborhood. She approached my daughter about a year ago and spouted out about her plans for the property, and that she was going to put a driveway from the back edge across my property to have access to Bauer Drive. And my daughter said, no, thank you. And they got into it back and forth, and my daughter walked away from her. But she's been proselytizing for herself and her interests all over the village, not to any great effect, but to great disagreement. And that's what brought people out today.
Okay.
That's who owns, she's speaking of the lady
Okay,
who owns
got
that
it.
piece
Yes,
of property.
right. It's what we've discussed today is just not economically viable for this
Right.
village.
Okay.
But perhaps there are other options to provide housing that you don't call workforce housing, that's just housing.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to thank you, everybody, for your input on it. I also want to share with you something that's fairly unique and special. We have a trustee today, Simeone, in front of us, who served on the Planning Commission for 20 years. This is the first time in 20 years, Ed, tell me if I'm wrong, that we have a full room of people on full subjects.
No, we had a second time, before you came along.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had it once.
No, several times.
Okay.
During the moratorium. believe
Okay.
me. We had 200 people in the room.
Okay, so, but these are really helpful conversation, because since I've been on the planning commission for 5 years, this is the first time that we've had this open dialogue. We've had a lot of input, which is a format I always had a vision that we could have, because our role, just to be clear, as a planning commission, because we're not sitting up there, but down here with you, having these discussions, is to hear what's out there, get the input, so that we can be more thoughtful in terms of our input to then pass it on to the trustees, because they sit up there, they can't say anything, they just listen, but we're here to help them. That's why they appointed us, to think about and all these issues and have community input, which is why I want to thank, I don't know who was behind getting all this group here, but this is exactly what we need, and I want to thank everybody for that, because this has been very helpful. And to me, in 5 years, it is the first time in a planning commission that I have 3 out of 5 trustees sitting here,
Yeah.
listening to all this, going, wow, this is really valuable. So I really want to thank everybody. We've been at it for 2.5 hours. I know Sage, our videographer, is beside himself. He wants to go home, and I apologize, Sage. Well, we've covered a lot. And I want to thank my co-chair, who may make a motion to close this meeting.
A second.
All in favor? Aye. And thank you, everybody.